So we're going to work through the practice one activity. In each of our lessons every week, we'll have a practice activity for you to work on. These are graded largely pass-fail. If you attempt it, you should get full credit generally with these. And they're just to give you some hands-on learning, a lot of research in learning, especially in this machine learning and other technology fields, shows that you students often can retain information if they do it. If they just see it or read it, they often forget it, and so this just forces you to do it some to help you with that learning process. Now, since these are practice activities, feel free to share solutions with other students. We have our weekly discussion, our unit discussion threads. So for unit 1 and 2, you have to post twice to it. So you can post a question, or you can reply to a question with an answer. You can provide a hint. So if you're going through something and you can't figure out something and then you do, just post that hint there. And a research link. Try to use good titles when you do your postings so that others can find these resources very quickly. So let's jump into this and look at this practice activity. This, like many of our practice activities, will be done with a notebook. This is a Jupyter notebook, or what's an IPYNP file. It's an used to be called Iron Python Notebook, is what it is, but now it's generally called Jupyter Notebook or Colab Notebook, depending on what environment we're using. This is just a file. You can move around, you can submit, and you can turn in. So the easiest way, if you click on this, it should open up right in the Google Colab, and you can use this. Is very similar to like Google Docs, except it's for these particular types of documents here. So let's just go through a brief overview of this environment we can set up and we can work with. So in this, there's two kinds of cells out here. Some cells I can type in code, and I'll see a little run statement here. Other cells I can type in some text, and if I double click on those, the text is in one side and a preview of it as another. In all of these, I can hit Shift Enter to execute that, and then with the code ones, besides hitting Shift Enter, I can also hit this Run button on these. Now, to give you a better introduction of this, let's go up to the top and kind of work through a couple things. So the first thing I want you to do is go over two of the materials from the first part of the unit, this YouTube video from Google's AI Adventures and this posting on machine learning, and then answer these questions. Now these are just these text blocks here, so if you click on them you can go into edit mode and you can just click in here and type in your answer. Now don't worry too much about formatting or anything like that yet, we'll get into that, but there are some basic formatting techniques up here that you can do as you type in your answers. And again, then you hit Shift Enter to get out of that, and then double click on the next one so you can just put in your answers right here. I've added a spot here that says answer. Now we'll be using a language called Python, and we can execute code here. So to give you some code to try out on these code blocks, so these are these code blocks, and I could add more by just clicking there and it'll add another code block here. I'm going to have you do this Python tutorial. This is from Kaggle, which is a well-known machine learning environment. We'll actually be looking at some different competitions. They host quite a few different competitions on Kaggle here. So this is just a beginning of their Python course. And again, we don't need to do that much Python, but it just gives you a quick introduction to their Python and the Python programming language for it. Initially, it walks you through this rather complicated set of code here, and then goes line by line and tells you what each line does. You can either copy it line by line, or you can actually just copy this whole. I can copy this whole code. I can hit Control C to copy, go back to my notebook, click on one of these cells, hit Control V to paste it in there, and then to run it, I can click on this run or hit Shift Enter and it'll run it, and then it'll print out something at the end. So you can see it's executing now. It'll take a sec and then it'll run and show the results down below here. So again, go through this Python tutorial. talks about variables and comments and indenting and strings and stuff like that. So this should give you a good start of all you probably need to know of Python for this tutorial. So, okay, now most of this stuff is just comments on here you can ignore. Once you get down to this section where it wraps up, you can finish that. And again, what I'd like you to do is just take some of the code from that and paste that into some of these blocks here. And again, you can add more blocks by clicking here to add another block down here and paste some code, as much code as you want in each block. You can do it all in one block if you want, or whatever we want, but put the code over in these blocks from that and try to get it to run. Okay, so that's the second part. Introduction to Python. The last part is just this Jupyter Notebook environment we're in, and we're going to have you look at this Introduction to Jupyter Notebooks by a website called DataQuest. So here's DataQuest and their Introduction to Jupyter Notebooks. Now we'll be looking at Jupyter Notebooks in two places. Sorry, I have a cat on my lap right now, so I'm recording that, so she's a good helper here. So if you see a tail flicking around, that's why. But okay, so back to Jupyter Notebooks. So this is an example of Jupyter Notebooks, and these are these files that end in IPYNP, Iron Python Notebook, but again, now we call them Jupyter Notebooks generally. And so this tutorial walks you through. Now you can either use these, run them as a Jupyter Notebook here or in Colab. If you're a beginning student, I suggest you do it in Colab. I think it's easier to set up and use Colab to work with. But a lot of this stuff, so this first stuff talks about installing Jupyter Notebooks and setting up that sort of stuff. So it talks about opening up and running Jupyter Notebooks. Now you don't have to do this. You can on your machine. So like I've installed Jupyter Notebooks using Anaconda. When I ran Jupyter Notebooks, it opened up this console window and then opened up this frame here. From this, I can go into my documents, find this course, and open up these notebooks, and so that's what I have here. So you can do this all here, but again, I find it's easier if you just do it all within this Colab, which is Google's version of this, which is all cloud-based for that. So again, you can skip over most of this first part, but it does talk about what this file type is, talks about the notebook interface here, talks about there's a kernel running in the background, talks about cells and what code cells are and markdown cells. These are our text cells, and tells you about some of these. You can actually take some of the code from here and you can just copy and paste it here. I can go to any empty cell here, or I could create a new cell at the bottom, a new code cell, and just paste it in. And since it's code, I can just run it and it should run and execute. Okay. So it walks you through some basic introductions, some keyboard shortcuts. These aren't that important, but again, if you want to look through them, they're sometimes helpful. It talks about Markdown, which is a simple formatting tool. You may have be more used to formatting like in Word or Google Docs or even HTML. This is a little different, a little more simplified here, and walks you through some of the basic things within Markdown. And we'll get more into that later on, but and then kernels are what we're running now. We'll be using something called Python 3 for all of our kernels. So whenever you have to create a new notebook, always select Python 3 if you have options for that, because that's the language we'll be working with for that. So, and again, we don't have to worry. Now, the last thing is this analysis example, and this is where I wanted you to spend a little more time going through this. This is an example of this stuff and setting this up. So it's going to walk you through some code for setting up your notebook. And again, you can copy. In fact, I've done this initially. I can copy this code and paste that in, and I've done that. I'm going to delete. I did this extra cell here. Let me just delete that. Okay. All right, so up here I've pasted that code in here. It's already in your notebook, and I can run that. That imports some standard libraries that we'll be using a lot. So these are some standard libraries, and a lot of our notebooks will start the same way with a couple imports. The next thing we do is it opens up a data file. Now data files are going to be kind of challenging for us, moving them around and linking them up and stuff like that. So this opens up a local copy of a data file. Instead of doing this, I'm going to do it a little differently. So this is why I have this line here, but this little pound sign means it's commented out and will be ignored. Anything after a pound sign is ignored. And here's the way we're actually going to do this. So I've stored this file somewhere else. Well, we're pulling it right from the DataQuest website and opening it up that way. So we're just doing it a little different way, but everything after this should be the same. So and then in the notebook, they talk about investigating your data set and printing out what's in your data set by doing a data df head. Now in our data set we use something called a data frame. This library called pandas is for Python data analysis here. And one thing it uses for data, it's kind of like a spreadsheet. It's a data frame, though it's called. And so often you'll see people use a variable named df, short for a data frame. So we just know that that's the type of this. And so we can say df.head to show that head and tail are the top or the beginning or the end of the data frame. And so this will show it. And again, it looks very much like a grid. It has columned row labels at the top, and then each row here is a different company here. I think this comes from the Fortune 500 companies apparently. So you can go through here, you can try out dftail, see what that does, try to select different columns, links and stuff like that. Just walk you through some of the different concepts in this. So try to take some of this code, copy and paste it, see if you understand that, and put it in your workbook here. Now one thing I suggest you also do is then when you have something in here and you want to comment on it, you can insert some text also, and you can insert a little text field here and maybe describe this. I can say the head command displays the first set of sample records from the data frame. And hit enter and it'll be there. Now you can also put in things here if you're working with your code. You could also put in, like I say, a number sign, and put in the code here. Say the first couple lines. Again, if you're used to programming and programming with comments, you may want to try this as we go. Now, you notice that this one gave me an error. The reason this gave me an error is that I've only executed certain things. So I executed this line, and you can see this little 3 here shows that it's done the third thing that's executed here. But this one has never been run, and so it's never figured out what data frame is. And now I jump down to here. So it's often important that you execute these in order here. So again, I can click on here, Shift Enter. And then hit Shift Enter again to display that one as we go. In fact, often when we open up a notebook, we'll just say run all the cells in the notebook. It'll start at the top and run down. Or if you're at some spot, you say run everything from that cell afterwards for this. Okay, so again, go through this beginning notebook. It'll introduce you to some stuff. Again, you probably won't understand all this. Again, the idea is just to experiment with your notebook a little bit and see how it was here. Now, in the end, what you want to do is you want to submit something here in the Blackboard. And so if you're in Colab, the easiest way here is just to share this. Click on Share. Make sure it's just like a Google Docs file. You can share it. You can just type my name in here and hit done. Or you can create a shared link if you want. And if you shared it with me, you should be able to copy this link and submit this link in with here. I'll let you know if I have any problems with how you share it with you, and I can have you reshare it if there are issues. Now, if you're in Jupyter Notebooks, we can do that. I can say the same thing. We did that in Colab, but I can have the same document in Jupyter Notebooks opened up here. So I can, again, Jupyter Notebooks is very similar. I can have these cells. With text blocks, I can edit the cells here. There's no preview, but I can type in my answers here and hit Shift Enter to say something. I can put in code here like I did in the other one. Hit Shift Enter to run that code. So again, I can follow along here in the same way. And in fact, these cells will run the same. This looks very similar. But again, this is on my local machine in my local machine file, so I will have saved this somewhere. So when I'm done with this, I want to make sure I hit a save command. This has already been saved here, and then I generally want to close and halt this. And then when I upload this file, it'll be saved. And I can see here it's in Documents, Machine Learning, so I can go to my Documents, Machine Learning folder, and here's my file here, and I can submit that in the Blackboard once I've saved it. So again, for beginning students, I suggest you use this Colab. I think it's easier to work with and do. But again, if you want to, and if you're more experienced, you can try out this Jupyter Notebooks here and use that. So let me know if you have any problems with this first practice exercise. Also, remember you can post questions and answers or hints at the discussion threads and share information about how everything's going with this. Good luck.